All right, we're a little past the top of the hour here, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Hello again. Thanks everybody for joining. Before we delve into today's topic, we wanted to just go over a quick few housekeeping items. First of all, this session is being recorded. Everyone will receive a copy of that recording via email shortly after the webinar is over. We also reserved 15 minutes for Q&A, so if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We are excited to have Vecna, our guest speaker, Anthony Michela, joining us today. The discussion today is going to cover a range of topics, but one of the focal points will be on the collaboration between humans and AMRs. So we'll dive into that more later. But with that, I'm going to just go right into this and introduce our first speaker, Manthan Pawar. Manthan is the product manager for robotics and RFID at Barcodes Group. Manthan plays a crucial role in coordinating the business plans and go-to-market strategies for robotics initiatives. He has a master's degree in robotics from NYU and over 8 years of experience that he brings to the table. He's focused on building and growing end-to-end AMR solutions and integration infrastructure, catering to manufacturing, logistics, and supply chain automation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Manthan.
Thanks so much, Brendan. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yep.
All right, awesome. So today we have an amazing guest with us from our partner, Vecna Robotics. We're going to ask him a lot of questions around why human in the loop, what Vecna offers to our end users. Before that, I want to talk about Barcode Group, what we do in the AMR space. Really the industries we serve today with our AMR offering is warehousing and distribution, manufacturing and e-commerce. Next, please. In manufacturing, we're seeing a plethora of use cases for AMRs where we are deploying material handling automation for work cell delivery, line set delivery, replenishment, end of line, cycle counting, many use cases, a lot of them enabled by Vecna Robotics. Next one. And when you see warehousing and distribution, a lot of similar workflows. If you want to take a screenshot of this, please feel free to take a screenshot of this for your documentation. But AMR applications and material handling automation for case picking, cycle counting, put away, replenishment, fulfillment. And one of the regular use cases that I always come across, which is the D-trash or the damage run type of applications with AMR. So many different applications and workflows enabled by AMRs that we're seeing today and deploying at our customers' sites. Next one, with regards to the 3PL, we bring a lot of major KPIs in the industry with mobile robotics type of application, wherein speed, productivity, and profitability are our key focus in the 3PL realm. Unlocking some of the top KPIs for our customers. Next one. So today's session, we're gonna interview our colleague, our friend, Anthony Moschella from our partner, Vecna Robotics, whose solutions we have been deploying at our customer facilities for last 1.5 years. And Anthony brings really a lot of experience around robotics. He's leading the product group at Vecna Robotics around hardware and software robotic solutions. He's a passionate engineer, a designer, a teacher, a speaker, and also in a 3D printing world. He's an advocate of that industry. More so than that, he is a robotics expert. He's been working with a lot of end users, customers, knows the persona of the customer, and want to get started there. Anthony, do you want to quickly go ahead, make an introduction about Vecna Robotics.
Anton, thank you. Guys, it's a great honor to be here. I'm super excited to talk with the Barcodes team about how Vecna Robotics fits into the warehousing and manufacturing workflows. And the thing I'm most excited to talk about here today is how humans and robots can work together and how the Vecna plus Barcodes perspective on AMRs can hopefully change the way that you and your customers are thinking about how humans and robots fit together in these environments. If there's one thing that I could leave you with in this webinar, it's that we're not pushing for a lights out manufacturing environment. We're not pushing for a lights out warehousing environment. The mission of what we're building here is how to look at the holistic system view and figure out where humans fit in, where robots fit in, and how to make those systems work together. So go next. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've seen, I want to start with a few questions, Anthony, if I can. A lot of our customers come from various backgrounds, whether it is manufacturing, warehouse distribution. Many of the times, the common question is, who should look at automating with AMRs in the first place? What are some of the top criteria you come across that show one of the, probably the highest ROI for end users?
It's a great question. I think the best way to look at automation at this stage in the technology lifecycle is that automation is absolutely the inevitable end state of where we're going in these industries. Certain aspects of material handling, particularly full pallet moves, it's sort of viscerally obvious that autonomous vehicles are the right way and the most efficient way for sites broadly to handle these types of operations. And I think really, if you're operating sites at any level of scale, if you've got large facilities, if you have high numbers of operators, if you're running 3 or more shifts, if you've got high seasonality, these are all the types of places where it's not too early for you to be looking at automation. But I would actually go one step further, that even if you're a small operation, if you're a small warehouse, sub 200,000 square feet, there are still a lot of opportunities for you to look at how AMRs can optimize your workflow. The barriers to entry have never been lower, and they're only going to continue to improve. So this is not just a technology for the Amazons and for the DHLs of the world. This is a technology that's starting to make sense at really every scale. And in particular, I think we're just at the early stages of the adoption curve for 3PLs. And I do see that the 3PL space is going to be a massive opportunity for expansion in the coming 12 to 18 months. I think in particular, the flexibility of AMR deployments are going to start to really see multiplying returns in the 3PL space.
So as a follow-up question to that, once you nail down, yes, you want to go after AMR workflows. Once you know that, yes, you want to probably look at AMRs to automate your workflows. How do I find workflows? Should customers go about finding these workflows to where AMRs really fit in?
Yeah, so I think depending on the level of sophistication and level of experience you have at your site with automation, this is where it's really helpful to engage a partner like Barcodes or Vecna for us to help you assess your site and figure out where to best deploy automation. I think the biggest mistake that people make who are new to automation is that they identify a particular task or a particular employee and say, that's the operation that I want to automate. And though that can be done sometimes, in general, it's a lot better for us to look holistically at the entire site and the entire system and identify which aspects of the system make the most sense for automation and which aspects of the system make the most sense for humans. So good example here is anything that's going to require a lot of variability, a lot of complex environments, a lot of highly variable decision-making is generally still best done by a human. But anything that is repetitive, anything that involves long travel distances, anything that is scheduled by your system, all of these things tend to be better with automation. So we can look at this at the system view and identify how to deploy automation in the way that's going to optimize the overall site workflow in a way that's going to maximize your team's ROI.
So with regards to the software piece, of robotics and AMRs. I've always been a proponent of how software is really, really important, more so than the hardware piece that we deploy. One of the reasons behind that being how the software automates the AMRs, right? It's really the brain behind the AMRs that makes it fully autonomous. It constantly changes. You have software updates on monthly basis, annual basis that you're improvising your software. In your opinion, what are some of the reasons that you talk about software a lot? I know. Uh, why why is software more important than uh, anything else in this industry right now?
So we view Vecna as a full stack solution company that includes the hardware and the software at every level. And what that means really is there's software that runs on the robots that allows them to autonomously navigate your facility and drive and see like a human operator. But we also have software that manages the site at the fleet level. And then we have another layer of software that integrates with your WMS or MES or other enterprise software. And then we have another software level that's showing and calculating metrics and analytics on the site. So there really is a huge breadth of what software means in the AMR space, right? And I think that one of Vecna's unique strengths is that we are a full stack solution provider. All of the software is developed by us, supported by us, and fully integrated in the Vecna ecosystem. So as a customer of Vecna, the types of software that you'll be experiencing in your day-to-day is really going to be the highest level things, the things that are integrated to your WMS or MES or your ERP, and the analytics tools that we offer so you can understand what's going on at the site. But behind the scenes is a huge body of work that is managing the site at a fleet level, managing traffic, dispatching missions, managing mission and battery charging levels for the system, dispatching robots to specific jobs. And then there's a whole nother layer of software that's phenomenally complicated that's actually handling the autonomy itself. So the best way to think about it is that there's a lot of stuff that happens under the hood that companies like Vecna and Barcodes can abstract away from you as a user. And what you experience as a customer is really the top level analytics, what's happening today, what's happening right now at my site, what's happening over time at my site. And then one level below that is how is my ERP or my, basically for lack of a better word, my business software integrating in the actions that are happening at my warehouse or manufacturing site.
So I know we have talked about this a lot, and one of the, I think it's probably top headline of this webinar, which is human in the loop, right? I've seen many AMR providers, different manufacturers, different approaches to how the AMRs are being deployed in the industry. I certainly have seen the human in the loop model working really the best for this stage of the AMR development. What do you have to share about that? Do you have any insights into how Vecna enables human in the loop and how beneficial it is for the end users?
Yes, it's a great question. I feel really passionately about this. I fundamentally believe that robotics at its core is a pro-human technology. And what that means to me is that robotics, when deployed at scale, is making the world a better place for human beings working in these facilities. It's not a story about taking away jobs. It's not about a story about displacing labor. It's a story about introducing this incredibly powerful tool to these very high value workflows to make the overall experience more efficient. And so I view the operators at the site, whether it's a manufacturing or a warehouse site, as an essential piece of this story. Just as well as I imagine the operators who are looking at our analytics, or their operations managers who are managing the site. And then the final piece of the puzzle is the Vecna employees. Vecna has developed what we call the Pivotal Command Center, which is our own proprietary software, human in the loop stack that allows us to be monitoring your sites, supporting robots when they experience an edge case or some undefined or unknown condition, and actually partnering with your ops managers and associates to understand what's happening on the ground to make improvements to the site and continue to improve what's going on in your operations to make the system continue to perform. So I think at this very, very high level, philosophically, we're viewing this as a human plus robot operation at its core, right? And then if we start to decompose some of the more specific warehouse operations, certain aspects of that really, really start to lend themselves to the kind of shared robot and human types of workflows. The one that bubbles up to the top of my mind, and the one that we've been investing the most in lately, is the case picking. So if you're not familiar with this is a very, very standard workflow in warehousing and automation, in which basically you're creating a mixed pallet for a retail location or a fulfillment location. So if you're, say it's a pet food warehouse, you've got dog food, cat food, and fish food coming in from your different manufacturers. They all get stored in the warehouse. And what you're creating on the outbound side is a mixed pallet with some number of dog food cases, some number of cat food cases, some number of fish food cases that goes out to your local pet store. The standard process for this today is to do it with a human being. And typically the workflow is a human being generates a shopping list, just like you're going to the grocery store, and gets on an end rider or a pallet truck and basically navigates the warehouse, stopping at each pick location to grab the items, load up the pallet, and basically build the pallet that goes out to the customers. So this is a super labor intensive workflow, quite complicated, and tends to be very high turnover and very physically and mentally taxing on the associates. So you can imagine a world where you can abstract some of this work away from those associates and actually use automation to make the system perform better. I live in New York City, so the example I always use here is, I can get a yellow cab and get a cab to a location, but I can also get an Uber, right? They're both human beings driving a car, but one of them has this layer of software that coordinates the activity at the fleet level. And so that's really the approach that Vecna is trying to take to problems like case picking, where we still have humans working together with robots and autonomy to solve a problem, but the overall system view is being managed by software. So I do want to get into some details about our case picking operation, but I'll let Nathan stop in.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful. One of the things I want to get out of this is, how should I, as a customer, look at this and say, hey, a human in the loop is definitely a better approach to robotics and automation versus a lights out automation at this stage of AMR development?
Yeah. So right now, I think the lights out factory, the lights out warehouse is still a bit of a myth, right? It's a little bit closer, and I mean there are examples of this happening at the factory side, where you've got very tight supply chains and very tightly controlled material. But the expenses here and like the capital cost of this is phenomenal, right? But in warehousing, like it's just not realistic because the dynamic nature of so many of these facilities, the high variability of seasonality of order profiles, holiday events that tend to drive some of these types of warehouse workflows, and frankly just the variability of product itself, right? Even with perfect autonomy, things like broken pallets or bad stretch wrapping or damaged products can be hugely challenging to systems without humans in the loop. So that's why we built the pivotal command center, right? A human would see, if the stretch wrap is covering a pallet opening, that's not going to stop them from picking up a pallet. But a robot that's seeing with a laser sensor is going to view that as an obstacle and stop. And that's the right thing for a robot to do. A robot should view that as an obstacle because the consequences of getting it wrong are extremely high. So the right way to bridge this gap, there's no amount of software that's going to bridge that gap. The right way to bridge this gap is to have humans in a tight loop with the robots to identify, say, oh wait, that's not an obstacle. That's just a piece of stretch wrap that's on the floor. Or that is an obstacle. That's the janitor cart. He left it there when he went out on break. And now we need to plot a path around that, right? And some of this can be done autonomously, but there are always going to be edge conditions. And the idea of bringing humans into that loop to help close those edge conditions are really going to make it possible for us to solve some of those problems and actually deploy at higher value to the customer.
Do you think human in the loop has an impact over the system uptime? Do you think a system uptime is usually better with human in the loop?
Definitely, right? In legacy AGV situations or legacy automation situations, if there was anything that seemed like an edge condition or seemed like a risk scenario, the vehicle would just stop, right? And what would be required would be a local assist at the site. Someone on the factory floor would have to go out, identify what the issue was, handle it directly, and then basically restart the system. By having the Pivotal Command Center, where we have human beings monitoring your site and identifying those edge cases remotely, from the operator's perspective on the floor, they don't see any issues. You don't see, from their perspective, it just seems like consistent uptime, right? So I think the right way to approach it is like there has to be a mix, right? There's always going to be some set of conditions that are true fault conditions on the floor. You know, there's a fire alarm, there's an accident, there's a spill, right? That they're going to require local assistance on the factory warehouse floor. But the vast majority of the things that are blockers to automation generally, including our AMRs, you know, stretch wrap, damaged pallets, unstable pallets. Like this is super, super common. And I think even in a perfect system, you're never going to get away from some of these edge conditions that very justifiably give pause to automation, right? And a robot sees a piece of stretch wrap on the floor and it views it as an obstacle because it should, right? Because it's hard for a robot to know the difference between a piece of stretch wrap and somebody's foot or an ankle, right? So we're trying to find the middle ground here. Obviously, safety is at the top of our list. Everything we do comes through that lens of safety, trying to ensure that our robots are never going to injure any operators on the floor. Because again, fundamental principle is a pro-human technology, right? But we do need to figure out how we can integrate the humans to handle those edge cases.
Right. I know when we deploy Vecna systems, it comes with PCC, Pivotal Command Center, and a plethora of information, dashboards, and interaction with for our end users. Can you shed some light on how a customer, whether it is supply chain manager or an associate, warehouse associate, supply chain executives, these three different buckets, interact with the PCC and the software to really enable it?
Yeah. So what the Pivotal Command Center is, it's not a call center. It's wrong to think of it as, you know, just someone waiting on the phones for the robot to call for help. Like really, you can think of them as sort of analysts who are monitoring what's happening at your site over long periods of time. So yes, there is some element of an event space. Hey, this robot is stopped and it doesn't know what to do. It needs guidance, or it needs a breadcrumb to get back onto its path. But more likely than that is that it's really looking at the operations at the site and being able to say, hey, we see over time that we have a lot of incidents around this aisle, right? And it turns out that's the aisle where the janitor leaves his cart when he goes out on break. Or we see a lot of incidents around this dock, and that's the dock where extra QC happens because your lowest quality vendors on the. So like we can actually identify things about your site that even your local operators or your local ops managers won't be able to know. When we build the relationship correctly, there's a kind of ongoing dialogue between the people who are ops managers on the ground or the robot wranglers who are sort of deeply associated with the autonomous systems and our Pivotal Command Center operators. They should have a phone number they can call anytime. There's usually a Slack or a Teams message where you can chat with, or a text message or an email channel. And sometimes it's as basic as, hey, this robot is stuck, can you help it? But more likely it's us feeding back to say, hey, we've identified some issues around these parts of your operation. the goal here again is throughput and uptime. And when the system is working correctly, the PCC agents who are supporting your site develop like an intimate understanding of your ops, even around, hey, Tuesdays are your busy days, or April is your busiest month. And we can adapt and make sure that we have the right people and the right staffing and the right support to make sure your operations are flowing through those peak times. One level up, just to finish your question around what this looks like from your SVP supply chain or whoever your executives who are monitoring it. PCC agents who monitor sites are contributors to our customer success team and all of our analytics teams. So when you get your weekly, monthly, annual reports where you see the performance of the system over time and over space, the PCC agents are contributing to that information to give you the perfect picture of what's happening at your site with your automation.
One of the last items that I wanted to touch base upon is the current economic environments and a lot of businesses rethinking their strategies around investments. What do you have to say to companies today who definitely have pain points around their supply chain? Do see labor shortage as their primary pain point, but at the same time, on the other hand, there's an economic environment and stressful environment. How can customers still adopt automation, or what are some of the ways they can adopt automation?
I mean, the macroeconomic situation has certainly affected the industry broadly, right? Interest rates are high, so capital expenses, budgets are being cut left and right. But the way that Vecna and Barcodes offers these solutions is typically as a service, right? So we're designing these systems to fit into your operational budget, and we're designing it in a way that hopefully is cost competitive with your existing labor. And again, the goal here is not to displace human labor, but so many of these facilities are operating at 20, 30, 40% labor deficits. And we're really looking at how Vecna Robotics can fit into that full pallet move workflow in such a way that it actually takes stress off your existing labor and improves retention and improves efficiency. So typically, the economics of a Vecna engagement, we'll do a site assessment, we'll do a solution design, we'll kind of quote a number of robots associated with a particular throughput or some particular performance KPIs, and the costs for you up front are if there's some amount of installation costs, which are going to be highly variable depending on how much integration there is, and then we charge you monthly per robot in the same way as that you're paying an operator. And I think almost without fail, once you get to 2 and 3 shift operations, the economics are strongly in favor of automation. Just for the reliability, the simplicity, the lack of turnover, the repeatability of the solution, and kind of the consistent performance you get from an automated pallet handling solution.
Last question, and then I want to turn to the audience if they have any questions. What is a typical ROI that you are seeing of AMRs being deployed, Vecna AMRs being deployed? What's that typical ROI that you see?
That's a very difficult question to answer broadly, but I can give you a couple of kind of data points that will sort of show kind of the extremes of it, right? So in 3-shift manufacturing applications, particularly the auto industry where labor costs are really high, the ROI for some of the lower value material handling moves typically returns in 9 to 12 months. And this is largely a function of the costs of labor in those markets and the efficiency gained by removing just having repeatable flow through some of these line-side replenishment type applications. The other extreme might be on the case picking type applications that I described earlier, where by having this human plus robotic collaboration, you can dramatically improve performance on the order of 2x, right? Sometimes greater than 2x at some of our alpha and beta sites. And so the performance gain in a case picking application can be massive, and this is particularly important because it's one of your highest labor operations in the warehouse. So we've seen for some of our case picking solutions, for ROIs on the order of 6 to 9 months. For more traditional warehouse operations, so dock to put away, cross docking, outbound staging, dunnage, you're going to see a longer ROI, again, just because the nature of warehouse labor and the nature of kind of the variability of those costs. But typically we offer our solutions on a 3-year or 5-year ROI, a 3-year or 5-year robots as a service contract, and your ROI is always within 2 years of that 3-year contract, typically much sooner. But it's going to be highly variable on your operation, highly variable on the travel distances and the amount of labor that you're displacing. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. All right, so I think we're going to turn to our audience here. Brendan, do you have any Q&A from the audience?
Sorry, I was muted there. Yep. I think a couple questions did roll in. One of them is, what are the added benefits of human-in-the-loop technology?
Good question. So I think that's a good kind of segue to talk a little about the Vecna case picking solution, right? As one of those examples of how we can really take advantage of humans and robots together. Like but by breaking from that traditional case picking model of the one-to-one human to order association, you can actually move the actual order, the pallet lives with the AMR, and the humans move to a model of them basically servicing the robots. So in a Vecna caseflow deployment, the robot will get the order from the WMS and basically will travel to all the pick locations in the warehouse. At each pick location, the associates will get an alert on their wearable device or their gun or their voice picking system to go to that robot, pick the appropriate number of cases, they go to the nearest robot, pick the number of cases, and then release the robot for it to move on to its next destination. The benefit here is that your humans are not wasting a lot of time traveling with the order. That is all low value, it's all waste. And your humans are actually focused on doing the tasks that are very difficult for automation to do, the actual picks themselves, managing the quality of the pallet builds, identifying any exceptions. And the robots are actually doing the low value stuff, which is moving around. So this is a great example of how humans and robots together can amplify efficiency. Another example here is what's on the screen right now, this notion of, if you've got a VNA aisle or some other high reach put away application. So typically in warehouses, they're increasingly going vertical. Increasingly in North America, you're seeing narrow aisle situations with these very expensive swivel trucks or narrow aisle trucks, which require very skilled operators. And what we can do here is we can use robots, the Vecna robots, to stage pallets from the inbound docks or outbound docks to the aisles where the put away or the pick operations are happening. And by doing this, yes, there's an extra touch in that our robots are picking and dropping pallets, but what you don't have is you don't have your humans kind of staging for your other humans in the aisle. And using the same technology we use for case picking, basically coordinating the human and robot activity, we can move pallets from the dock to a VNA staging area and then create a mission for the human driver in the VNA truck to handle the put away. So the end result here is improved throughput at the system level, even though robots are only doing half of the work. Does that make sense?
I think so. Awesome, thank you, Anthony. Another question that came in is, what advancements do you foresee in AMR capabilities in the near future?
So today, robots are not as efficient as human drivers in the kind of one-to-one comparison, right? So if you had a human on a forklift and a robot on a forklift clearing a dock, the human will be faster. If you spent any time in any of these distribution centers, human drivers drive incredibly quickly, and they're incredibly fast at picking and dropping. It's way faster than robots. That comes with some cost, right? And those costs are safety, those costs are incidents, those costs are damaged product. Our robots are definitely going to be much more deliberate and much more careful. than your human operators across scale and across time. But over time, we do see paths to continuing to improve vehicle speed and vehicle performance, and while maintaining the safety. And that's a huge area we're pushing on. With each subsequent software release, basically every month, we get new upgrades to our autonomy stack that makes the robots drive faster, stop less, and continue to maintain the high safety record. Beyond that, what we're looking at is trying to extend automation into some of these more challenging areas of the warehouse, right? Ultimately, I do believe that a mix of AGV and AMR technology will be able to handle every operation in the warehouse, including things that are traditionally very difficult to automate: high reach pick and high reach put away, trailer loading and unloading, interaction with certain types of infrastructure like work cells or pallet wrappers, and some of the more advanced kind of manufacturing applications where you may have, you know, mixed fleets of robots or mixed fleets of autonomy that you sometimes see in automotive factories.
Thank you. Along those lines, another question was, you know, who should go for an AMR? How do you decide between an AMR and an AGV?
That's a great question. AMRs, so Vecna is invested fully in AMRs, and where AMRs really shine is places where they need dynamic behaviors. And what dynamic behaviors means to me is having a high number of pick and drop locations that are not on a pre-described schedule. So a warehouse is a great example. An incoming truck comes in, we stage at the dock, and there's no predefined workflow of where all those pallets need to go in the warehouse. From any given dock, those pallets could go to any given location in the warehouse. Where AMRs are going to really shine is when you have large numbers of those types of operations, those kind of one-to-many distribution, one-to-many missions, and lots of robots operating in that facility, dynamically generating routes and managing traffic as a fleet. This is in contrast to what you're seeing in a lot of sort of more traditional manufacturing operations, where all of the movements are very takt time dependent. In an automotive factory, a car needs to come through this work cell every 90 seconds. And every 90 seconds, we need to have this much material at this site. So therefore, we can schedule these jobs in advance, and in a very sophisticated automotive factory, you'll see every operation already be scheduled, right? So the advantages of AMRs and in those types of facilities are less. Really, the only advantages become like where AMRs are navigating around human traffic, as compared to an AGV, which is operating on a schedule. It's like a train on a track. So I think as autonomy continues to move more and more towards the warehouse, and as warehouse adoption starts to grow, I think you're going to see the value of AMR continue to multiply. I think in manufacturing, AMRs still make sense for large numbers of applications, but tend to be a little bit more challenging, or less, the value is less evident in a highly takt time dependent situation like moving whip down the center.
Awesome, thank you. I think we got one more question here. What considerations should be taken into account for long-term scalability?
I have absolute conviction that autonomy is the future in these industries and will only continue to grow. The best way to think about it is that this is complex stuff, right? I mean, this is an autonomous forklift operating in a warehouse is a subset of the self-driving car problem. These are highly complex systems, highly complex machines. They're safety critical, and the requirements here for this to work at scale are quite challenging. So I think as you look to the future here, the costs will come down, but the complexity remains high. And as the software capabilities continue to improve, you're going to want partners who are going to grow with you, right? So I think that this model of robotics as a service, where you're getting continual upgrades, continual performance gains, monthly, quarterly, weekly even, releases that are fixing bugs, but more importantly, improving performance of those edge cases, is really the key to getting robotics at scale. And across every one of the use cases I've described, warehousing, manufacturing, case picking, having humans in the loop as a first-class citizen is an essential piece of making this deployment work at scale. I believe that there is not an AI path to solving every edge case in the warehouse. If you've spent any time in these facilities, they are incredibly chaotic. There's an incredible amount of variability. And it's not only is it not realistic, I think it's the wrong approach to try to solve that problem through an AI lens. AI will improve, the autonomy will improve, but I don't think we get to a place where cutting humans out ever becomes the right approach. So I think, a company like Vecna, like we've built in our Pivotal Command Center and our human in the loop service as a first-class citizen of our product. And I think it's one of our key differentiators, but I think even into the future, as the technology gets more sophisticated, that remains a critical piece of the system. It's not that we're trying to lean away from our Pivotal Command Center, from our humans. We actually want to continue to use them. We think that's a value add to the customer. And over time, I think they're going to be able to help us solve more and more complex problems and address, higher complexity and higher value operations.
Awesome. Well, that was the last question that we have here. We'll give a little bit of time back to everybody here. We appreciate everybody for joining. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Vecna Robotics. We look forward to speaking to everybody on some of these topics in the future. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email robotics@barcodesinc.com. You can visit our website at barcodesinc.com/solutions. And again, we will be sending this recording out to everyone that registered. So keep an eye out for an email coming from us with the recording of today's webinar. Really appreciate everybody showing up. And we hope that you all have a good holiday weekend coming up here. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Anthony.